The movie opens in a secluded trailer park at a place called Gatlin Lake, and we see a truck pull up in front of one of the trailers. Inside, an elderly couple is sleeping peacefully, until the wife awakens to the sound of a loud knock. She carefully approaches the door and peers outside, only to see the empty truck. And then, when she turns around, she sees a masked girl, Dollface, and the figure quickly kills her off-screen. The girl then goes to the bedroom and lies down next to the old man, who's still sleeping. The scene then cuts to the next day, where we see a married couple, Cindy and Mike, packing their belongings to go somewhere. It turns out their teen daughter, Kinsey, has a very rebellious nature, so she's being admitted to a boarding school. Before sending her away, they plan to spend some time at Uncle Marvin's trailer park, which happens to be in Gatlin Lake. The family soon drives off, and on the way, they pick up their son, Luke, who's playing baseball with his friends. Luke is annoyed that he has to go, but Mom insists that this is their last chance to spend time together as a family before Kinsey departs. Luke taunts his sister for causing trouble for their parents and reveals how they've spent a fortune on her boarding school. The siblings begin to argue, while Cindy leaves a voicemail for Uncle Marvin, explaining that they're running late. After driving for a while, they reach a diner, where everyone begins to eat except for Kinsey. She remains outside by the car, smoking a cigarette. Cindy arrives to console her, but the spoiled brat complains about having to go to boarding school and says it is normal for teenagers to make mistakes. However, Cindy argues that some mistakes are beyond repair and that all she wants is the best for her daughter. In the following scene, the family arrives at the trailer park late at night. They notice that the place is extremely quiet, with no sign of anyone nearby. Slightly confused, they proceed to the park's front office, where Cindy grabs the key left for her designated trailer. She doesn't see her uncle anywhere but does find a note from him, saying he will meet them the next morning. Following this, Cindy returns to the car, and the family heads to trailer number 47. They soon arrive at the trailer and begin to settle in. They discover that it is stocked with food and other essentials. But then, suddenly, someone knocks at the door. Cindy goes to check and sees a young girl standing in the dark. She's looking for someone named Tamara, but Cindy calmly explains that it's the wrong address. Upon hearing this, the young girl doesn't say a word and quietly leaves. The family is slightly perplexed by the bizarre scenario, but they decide not to dwell on it. Later, the parents suggest playing a card game and ask the children to join them. Luke agrees and puts his phone on the table, but Kinsey, as usual, remains stubborn. Mike then goes over to her and has a heart-to-heart conversation. He explains that sending her away is difficult for them as well, but they are doing this for her own good. Upon hearing this, Kinsey finally puts her phone down but then storms out of the trailer in anger. Mike tries to go after her, but Cindy stops him and asks Luke to go instead. The boy is hesitant because he doesn't get along with his sister, but at his mother's insistence, he eventually agrees. After searching for a while, he eventually finds her smoking alone. Cindy scolds him for coming after her, but Luke tries to convince her that boarding school isn't such a bad thing. She can start fresh in a new place and become who she wants to be, but Kinsey doesn't seem to be impressed by his pep talk. Back at the trailer, Mike is concerned that they made the wrong decision regarding their daughter's future. But Cindy disagrees, reminding him that they tried everything to correct her behavior. Just then, they are interrupted by a knock on the door, and it turns out to be the same young woman from earlier. She asks about Tamara again, and Mike inquires if she's alright. But the freak doesn't say a word and simply leaves. This spooks the couple slightly, and they decide to go find their children. Meanwhile, Kinsey and Luke are wandering around the area when they come across a trailer with its door open. Since they have nothing better to do, they decide to enter and fool around. Suddenly, they hear a loud thud coming from the bedroom. The siblings nervously head inside, where they are relieved to find that it's just the family dog. But then, they see "hello" written all over the windows with blood. Kinsey also notices something covered with a sheet, and, to their horror, they find the mutilated remains of their uncle and aunt under it. Turns out this is the same couple we saw at the beginning of the movie. The siblings immediately run away from the trailer, and they soon find their parents, who have also been looking for them. The siblings then explain how they discovered Uncle Marvin and Aunt's mutilated bodies in their trailer. Worried, Mike instructs the girls to go back to the trailer and call the cops, while he and Luke investigate the crime scene. Upon returning to the trailer, Kinsey is still shaken and continues to cry. But as Mom is comforting her, they suddenly realize that all of their phones have been smashed on the table. One of them appears to be operational, so Cindy tries her best to call the police. But unfortunately, Dollface appears at that moment and is ready to kill them. The mom and daughter immediately run to the bathroom and lock the door. However, they know that it is only a matter of time before the freak breaks in. The duo soon notices a sunroof window in the ceiling and decides to escape through there. They manage to open the window, but by this time, Dollface has also broken the door. Cindy reacts quickly and pushes her daughter outside. Unfortunately, when it's her turn, Dollface arrives and brutally stabs the poor mom in the stomach. Kinsey watches it all go down right in front of her eyes. Moments later, she tragically passes away, and Kinsey has no choice but to run away from there. On the other hand, the father and son arrive at Uncle Marvin's trailer. Mike is shocked to see the mutilated bodies, and he immediately grabs the landline to call the cops but discovers that the wire is severed. Mike then plays the voicemail Cindy had left for Uncle Marvin in the morning. This makes them realize that the killer must have heard the message and was waiting for them to arrive. Just then, a rock suddenly flies through the window. When they look outside, they are horrified to see a man wearing a sack mask, with an axe in hand. The two quickly hide, and Mike recalls that Uncle Marvin used to have a gun. After some searching, he eventually finds it in a drawer and loads it. He then calls out to the masked man, stating that he has a gun and will use it in 5 seconds. Mike starts counting to 5, and when he looks outside again, the masked man is gone. Taking advantage of this, the father and son run away from the trailer. In another scene, Kinsey arrives in front of a fence but struggles to escape through it. Dollface continues to chase after her, forcing her to run in the other direction. On the other hand, Mike and Luke return to the trailer and discover their phones smashed and the bathroom door destroyed. A worried Mike then goes to the bathroom and becomes distraught to see his wife's lifeless body. Luke also rushes to see her, but Mike stops him. He urges his son to be strong as they need to find Kinsey. Next, the two head outside and drive off in their car, while calling out for Kinsey. But then, someone throws a brick at their windshield, and they end up crashing into a trailer. In the meantime, we see Kinsey frantically wandering around, looking for help. She soon notices someone in a car flashing lights at her. She calls out to the person, but it turns out to be the masked man, who begins chasing after her. A horrified Kinsey makes a run for it and seeks refuge inside a playground tunnel. When the car arrives in front of the tunnel, she screams at the killer to leave her alone. But then, all of a sudden,
leave us alone!
But we've just started.
A third masked killer named Pinup Girl appears and states that they're just getting started, so Kinsey dashes away from there. Meanwhile, in the car crash, we see Mike seriously injured and pinned to his seat by a wooden beam. Realizing that he's not going to survive, he urges his son to leave. Luke asserts that he's not going to leave without him, but Mike says that his sister needs him more. He also hands him the loaded gun for protection, so a tearful Luke bids goodbye to his father, promising to return soon. As soon as he leaves, the masked man appears and silently gets inside the car. Mike begs him to leave his family alone and questions why he's doing all this. But the killer doesn't speak a single word. Instead, he turns on the music in the car. Mike realizes his end is near and begins to curse him, so the killer swiftly finishes him off with a single stab to the throat. In the next scene, Kinsey runs into another trailer to hide. She soon hears music coming from the bedroom, so she follows the sound until she comes across a Jack-in-the-Box toy. Unfortunately, this turns out to be a trap as Dollface suddenly appears from beneath a blanket. She stabs Kinsey's arm and leg right when Luke shows up and points his gun at her. The freak doesn't appear to be intimidated and calmly asks if he's going to shoot her. However, Luke can't bring himself to pull the trigger. Kinsey requests the gun so she can shoot the psycho, but Luke refuses and leads her away from there. Afterward, the siblings discover another empty trailer and climb in through a window. Luke then tends to his sister's injuries, but she experiences a mental breakdown. She feels guilty for not being able to help Mom, but Luke asserts that it's not her fault. However, their moment is cut short when the killers ram their truck through the trailer wall, forcing the siblings to jump out of a window. While fleeing, Luke notices that his sister's leg is severely injured, and she's unable to run. So, he hides her on a porch and asks her to remain there until he returns. He now plans to go to the park's front office and call the police, and it is here that Kinsey says she loves her brother. Next, Luke arrives at the front office and manages to get a hold of 911. He explains the situation to the operator, but the call is cut short before he can provide more important details. Moments later, weird noises start coming from all directions. This scares poor Luke, so he grabs a golf club, right when Pinup Girl shows up behind Luke while the masked man begins to bang on the front door. Luke runs through the back door and arrives at a large pool. And then all of a sudden, he easily knocks Pinup Girl down with the golf club. But as he proceeds to remove her mask, Luke repeatedly stabs her until she's dead. Unfortunately, Luke doesn't even get a chance to recuperate as the masked man appears with his classic axe. He swings his axe at Luke, causing both of them to fall into the pool. A fierce underwater battle then ensues, but Luke ends up dropping his knife. He then tries to run away, but the masked man easily catches up to him and stabs him in the back. The psycho leaves the boy to die from his injury while he goes after the last target. Moments later, we see Luke vomiting blood, and it seems like he's not going to make it. But just then, Kinsey arrives, drags him out of the pool, and hides him in a corner. His condition is very bad, so she asks him to stay here while she goes to find some help. After this, Kinsey limps toward the road, where she luckily comes across a police truck. The officer sees her bloodied state and asks what's going on. Kinsey anxiously begs for help, but neither of them notices Dollface approaching as she slashes the officer's throat. This traumatizes Kinsey, and she immediately runs inside the police truck but realizes that the keys are missing. At this point, Dollface appears outside the window and taunts her by showing the keys. She then forces herself in and starts her onslaught. But fortunately, Kinsey manages to grab the officer's shotgun and blasts the killer away. She then sees Dollface on the verge of death. Kinsey removes her mask and questions, "Why are you doing this?" But Dollface simply says, "Why not?" Next, she gets inside the vehicle and decides to head to her brother. But the masked man suddenly crashes into her truck with his own. He does so numerous times, causing Kinsey to be thrown outside. But at this critical moment, a stroke of luck favors her. The masked man's vehicle appears to be stuck, and it is spilling gasoline. Taking full advantage of this opportunity, Kinsey brings out her lighter and ignites the fuel, causing both vehicles to explode. During this, she assumes the killer is finally dead, but to her horror, he starts driving toward her even in the burning car. A helpless Kinsey runs to a small, narrow bridge, where she collapses due to her injury. Soon after, the masked man emerges from his truck, armed with an axe. The majority of his body is burnt, and a large piece of glass has impaled him in the abdomen. He somehow pulls the glass out but soon loses consciousness due to his injuries. After this, Kinsey walks to the main highway, where she manages to stop a vehicle. A woman asks what's happening, but she instantly returns to the vehicle as it turns out the masked man is back again. Kinsey quickly climbs onto the back of the truck, while the masked man also jumps in. Fortunately, Kinsey finds a baseball bat, which she uses to bash him in the head. This knocks him off the truck, and he appears to be dead. In the final scene, we see Luke recovering in the hospital, while Kinsey sits by his side, lost in contemplation. The horrors of the night before will traumatize her throughout her life, but at least they made it through. But before the film ends, she hears a strange sound outside the room, followed by a knock on the door. Thus, we reach the end of this film. Thanks for watching. You can like this video to support us. Don't forget to subscribe for more content. See you in the next video. Goodbye.